by the time I was 2, I was speaking in very long sentences. I actually
Oh
put a
yeah.
video up on my Substack and etc. recently of me reading from a book, and I have another video I was going to put up too, where you can see my spontaneous language. And I was extremely precocious
Hmm.
verbally. I was not typical. You can compare me to Brown stages of morphological development, which is the norms that we use in my field for judging where in the progression a kid is.
Would you? Is there like a? Are you at a level like a genius level or sub-genius level? Is there like a quantification of that?
Um, I don't know about in terms of language development. I was definitely hyperlexic because I could read really early and precocious verbally. State testing put me at above two standard deviations, but below 3 standard deviations, which I found out because the teacher just like read off everybody's scores one time in 8th grade.
Oh.
So I also found out where some of my classmates were too. It really bothered me that I wasn't highly gifted. Just kidding.
Were you in kind of a gifted AP programs in high school? Stuff
Yeah,
like that?
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, I entered Berkeley as a sophomore, and I still stayed for 6 years.
Oh, wow. Well, yeah. I mean, once you're on the treadmill, why would you stop?
Yeah, I mean, if they were going to pay me to go there, why not?
Wait, what level up did you work up to in postgraduate stuff? Did you get your doctorate or
No, I don't
second
have a doctorate. I have
master's?
a
Okay.
master's
You ever think about getting
and
a
a
doctorate?
clinical license. At some point, I'd like to. Yeah, I thought about, or my plan was to go work in the field and decide kind of like what I wanted to get a doctorate in after I had a few years of clinical practice.
Hmm.
I mean, at this point, I'm very preoccupied with transmass voice disorder. So if I went back, I'd probably want to do something in that domain.
Transmask
So
voice
like the effect of
disorder?
testosterone on females, why they sound like they have frogs in their throat.
It's a very particular sound.
Yeah, it's I've likened it to trying to make a ukulele sound like a bass guitar by making the strings thicker. It's just not going to work.
Huh. Yeah. Or a kazoo. There's something kazooey about it, like this kind
Yeah.
of rasp thing. I mean, why do you think that I can pull off the baritone, but a female couldn't pull off I don't know if this is a baritone, but like the deeper register without being I guess I'm kind of scratchy, but I guess the lower notes kind of
Male
mask it.
voices are more creaky than female voices, a little bit more roughness to it. But, the proportions are also different. They're it's the size of your larynx is very connected to your hyoid bone, and male skeletal proportions are tied to the Y chromosome, independent of testosterone. So you can give testosterone to a female, but it's not going to change the size and shape of her larynx, especially if she's post-adolescent. It might change the size if she's pre-adolescent, but it won't change the proportions.
Oh, really? Okay, so the bone structure isn't really affected by exogenous testosterone all much?
To an extent, but the proportions of it are so unaffected that they can tell the difference between males and females. I was reading something on PubMed where they had a sample of both, and it was over 99% accurate just using the rugae of the palate, the hard palate, the top of your mouth. They could tell the difference between males and females.
What's this ruque? Or is that what
The bumps on the top of your palate, like if you
Yeah.
touch the roof of your mouth,
Yeah.
those bump proportions are sexually dimorphic.
Huh.
And
Probably
so
having
you
to
can
do with
tell
the
a
bone.
male and a female skeleton just with the maxilla, which is this bone,
Oh, wow. Okay.
with over 99% accuracy.
Does that affect, I guess, articulate behavior all that much? Like the different proportions between men and women? Are women better at?
Almost certainly, yeah, because most of the timbre of your voice has to do with your skull resonance. So, you get your fundamental and some other proportions. Sorry, I touched the mic, but from your vocal cords themselves. But then it's resonating in your skull, and you have all these cavities in your nose and your mouth, and you're constricting and changing the size and shape of the cavities by moving your tongue around, by moving your lips around. Like ee, ooh. That's a difference in resonance. It's not a difference in pitch. So there's
Oh, so resonance is the shape of the sound, like E and ooh, E, ooh, E, ooh.
So, like if you have a wine glass and it's like, "Eh."
Yeah.
So what determines that pitch is how much of the glass is full. So your mouth is kind of the same way. So if you're making E sound, you've got a really big wine glass and a really tiny wine glass in the front because your tongue is constricting in the front.
Yeah.
And if you're making ooh, you have like a medium wine glass and a medium wine glass because your tongue is constricting in the back.
And based on transmasc voices, that's mostly having to do with the larynx thickening, like, or the vocal cords being thickened.
A few things are happening with transmass and voice disorder. So testosterone affects how fast collagen synthesizes. And so that means like cartilage can grow. But because the overall size of the structure is tied to the hyoid bone, which for a lot of these people, it's already done growing, that means that, the soft tissues are thickening and irregularly because it's happening in a grown person or an adolescent person and not in a fetus, which are much smaller. So it's much easier to cook it evenly. So you have the adolescent is the which should be analogous to the body of the guitar. The walls of the wood part of the guitar are thickening, and then the strings themselves, the ligament parts are also thickening because they're made out of collagen, but it's a different like kind of collagen with even less blood supply. So it's going to be slightly less affected in my understanding than cartilage. Additionally, you have muscle in your vocal cords. Those are going to roid out, and those are going to increase in size. And then over the muscle, you have this elastic tissue that's kind of like meat in a taco shell, but this side has to like do this. And so if this muscle gets really big, it can't really move much
Oh,
anymore.
okay.
And then they go off the testosterone and that shrinks down, but this is like, has been all stretched out. And I think it gets a little, what should I call it? Stretch marks.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then otherwise it's also changing the thickness of it. So estrogen tends to make things stretchier, connective tissue stretchier, and testosterone makes it less stretchy. So all these different tissues are being affected differentially. And then some of them are not bouncing back when they go off the testosterone, and some of them are. And so they can just end up with this situation where they're off the testosterone and it's like they have less muscle mass to move these stiffened
Yeah.
collagen structures. And it's all happening inside of a much smaller space. The female larynx is about the size of a dime. The male larynx is about the size of a nickel.
Huh.
The glottis, the cross section of the glottis.
Okay.
So that thickening, even a small amount of thickening can really like crowd things. And you also have tiny little cartilages that are articulating in 3 dimensions to help adjust the pitch. Those are getting thicker and they just don't have any place to move. And if there's not room to move, then it's going to dampen the strings. And so you get kind of that sound,
Vocal fry. Is that
Yeah,
the same thing as
exactly.
vocal fry? Could
Yeah, vocal
I'm sorry
fry,
to
aka
ask you to
creaky
remove
voice.
a piece of clothing, but the microphone is bouncing against your pearls. I wonder if you could
Oh,
push up the pearls or
sure.
since we're speaking about sound.
Oh,
So are you developing kind of in the back of your head or even intentionally like techniques, exercises to work that out, or thinking through like therapeutic things to change that or diminish its effect?
it's kind of difficult because that's kind of like what I would want to go back and study is to see what would be the most effective. My instinct is that a lot of the interventions for something called muscle tension dysphonia would be helpful. That's basically like where you're chronically overstrained, and so that's you're don't have a optimal, it's called breath support, moving over the larynx and reduce muscle tension so that taco shell can actually move. Because if the muscles are too tight, that's going to muscles get thicker cross sectionally when they tighten. So you want it to be as thin as possible, as relaxed as possible.
Hmm.
Give that connective tissue the most flexibility to move around. So that would be one intervention that I would think is those kind of breath support exercises. But it's hard. I'd really want to collaborate with an endocrinologist and see if there was any sort of like medical intervention that could adjust the connective tissue. Is there something that we know beyond just going back on estrogen that would affect it in that way? Any sort of, like, it's hard. It's hard to imagine the actual solution, because I feel like cutting it should be a last resort always.
Ooh, yeah. I know they have those interventions for male to female transsexuals trying to feminize their voices. So there's some sort of shaving or something that's going on in there. Seems like a very risky procedure, but.
So with the voice feminization surgery, what they do is they actually will go in and you have the long words, and they'll just kind of like cut it and like sew it together to kind of artificially shorten it.
Huh.
But then what happens is that you get the Aztec death whistle kind of train whistle effect, which is called diplophonia, where you have essentially, instead of preventing it from opening all the way, you just have like two sets of vocal cords now, because you've tied it in the middle. So you get, because the air going over it and going back over it will still cause that it to move. So
Are you able to make that sound?
No, I don't know how to do it.
Okay.
You can splice in an Aztec death whistle if you want. That's what I usually do for peppermint.
That's what it's called. Aztec death whistle. Is that the technical term? Okay.
Yeah, actually, it's a specific kind of whistle.
Huh.
But a train whistle is the same effect, where you just have multiple tones at the same time.
Oh, okay.
Diplophonia. Two phones, diplophonia.
Is there any other creature that we know of that's got like a similar situation in our vocal cords? Because it seems like, I'm sure it's probably pretty complex for a lot of, for humans, it's very complex because we use it.
Someone was telling me that birds somehow had like two sets, but I think I might be confused about what they have two sets of.
Have you studied birds at all? Those cockatoos or whatever that talk?
Very slightly. I know that their vocal formant capacity is really complex, which is why they can imitate those sounds. And I know it has something to do with two of something. I forget what. Because they can do all that with no lips. That's the weird thing.
So it's all going through their nose somehow?
It's going through some kind of structure that they have that we don't.
Huh. That's a big project. That would be pretty groundbreaking to be able to work on the demasculinization for detransitioners of the voice.
Yeah, I know that there's other people working on it too, so it would just be kind of seeing what I can contribute.
Have you worked with any male to females or voice feminization? Do you know how that generally, what they work on or what's going on for a male to?
In my practice, that's not something that I work on in my practice. It's only been outside of a clinical context. I have friends that I recommend get speech therapy if I feel like that could be better to get evaluated, of course, because they're my friends. So I'm not like clinically recommending anything. But that's my only exposure so far. So if I went back to school for any sort of doctorate, then it would actually be something where I would be interacting with them in a clinical clinician-patient kind of setup. But so far, that hasn't been something I've experienced. I mostly do brain injury.
Okay, yeah.
Which is...
The relationship between our words and our brain is so integral, like even our thoughts. Like I just wonder, and I don't think I've found anybody who has like proven why, but there's just a lot of theories about why consciousness developed in accordance with language and the relationship between those two things. But it's a physical phenomena. The language is a physical phenomena, but we abstract it somehow in our brains into form worlds, basically, that we live in. But it's all rooted in this little box right here, or this mushy mushroom up here, or the relationship between the two. Do you have any just so stories about why human beings are so like we are?
I mean, I think that our soft palate has a lot to do with it. But the question is, why did it evolve that way? It's kind of chicken and egg, but somehow we trended in that direction. So
What,
we
what
have a lot more control
what's the
over.
soft
We can
palate?
The soft palate is what allows you to distinguish between an L and an N.
Okay. LN.
Um, because supposedly that's something we have more control over than a lot of other entities. Although we're not the only species that's been known to use like specific sounds to mean specific things. And dolphins have been shown to understand grammar. So they've been able to teach dolphins the difference between a movable and a non-movable object, and to give it commands based on move the object to the other object. And so it will recognize when it's been told to move a non-movable object to a movable object, and will do the reverse in an attempt to try to understand. Or it will just kind of make distress calls.
And that message is sent to them through sound. They're told to do something rather than like a light or some other way of communicating.
That's a good question. I'm not sure how they did it specifically with the dolphins. I want to say yes, but actually that's I'm forgetting exactly how they did that. I think they might use hand signals actually for them. But I know with dogs you can definitely use sound, and dogs can make inferences about what a new object name means out of a field of like 40. So if you teach it 40 different items and then you put a new item in a room with the other 40 items and you tell it to go get the new item and the word, it's never heard the word before, it will go up and pick out the new one correctly by making an inference about which one it meant.
It won't at 40? That's the
It will.
max? It will. Wow. Okay.
Well, 40 was the max in the study I'm thinking of. I took an
Oh,
animal
wow.
cognition class at Berkeley. They covered a lot of this.
Huh.
Very influential.
On your thinking?
Yeah. My,
How
my,
so?
it just really expanded my view of what was language, what is communication, how do different entities think. Think of another example. I mean, there's also famously crows can solve like 12-step problems to get food.
Can't they
Pigeons
can
can do
track
top
faces
categories.
too, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
crows can recognize faces.
So what's going on in Genderland? Do you perceive any movements or changes or activity of interest, of note?
I mean, there was a pretty good turnout at Glasgow yesterday, I think, or it was the Kelly J. Keane event.
Let women speak.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That looked pretty epic.
Yeah, there was going to be a furry counter protest or something that apparently fizzled.
Yeah, a furry definitely ran up and attacked a woman who was in a little pedicab,
Okay.
and then got chased off and was later confronted because we weren't sure whether why because it was a blurry video and it was a small person, and this person had lifted their shirt up and like flashed, and we're like trying to figure out like, are those top surgery scars? Is it moves? Which is it? Like, why did they do this? And then they got confronted later by somebody holding a camera when they were just like locking up their bike or something. And it was at first, it turned out to be a male, came at the person really aggressively in like normal male voice. And then the woman was like, "Oh, you're not so big now, are you?" or something like that. And he just totally went full Monty Python and was like, "Oh, well, you're coming at me." This Mickey Mouse, like, "Oh shoot, I broke character."
I'm harmless. I'm harmless. I swear.
I had the whole makeup done and everything. And then there was another woman had coordinated her bangs with her shirt and her jacket, and it was just, don't do that. It's a bad idea. And then someone corrected me. That's a fringe. That's a fringe. Yeah, it was like, she had a sign that said something nasty about turfs.
Yeah.
And it was like the most low effort sign. I guess she was too busy picking out her outfit and dyeing her hair. It was a very specific dye job too. It wasn't like it was the solid color blocking or anything. It was like a specific pattern that somehow also matched her shirt and matched her jacket. I think she went to the thrift store and just like was like, oh my God, two things that match. I'm totally doing my hair like this too. I'm going to look great.
Huh.
I have no idea what the difference between a fringe and bangs are, though. Don't know why I was corrected. To me, it's all a forehead mustache.
Really?
So,
You don't do bangs? You think they're
I did
below
once.
you? Okay.
Well, no, they're above me.
Well, are they though? I guess it depends on how you spray paint them, right? Are they drapes or are they some radar dish?
I've never done the radar dish. Maybe someday.
Did you miss that?
That's the reason to get bangs.
Were you too young?
I said I would never get a forehead mustache again unless they had handlebars.
Forehead mustache. What does that even mean? How is it a forehead mustache?
It's like a mustache, but it's on your forehead.
Okay.
It's what I think when I see bangs. I'm sorry. If you have bangs, I'm sorry. Don't cancel me.
I have to think. I don't know a lot of girls with or women with bangs right now, but I haven't really been paying attention, so I don't know if they're in or out.
I have no idea.
Okay. Yeah. Is there a turf aesthetic in all of your travels around North America and the UK? Is there kind of like an aesthetic that's merging? I know there's those three colors, but I'm wondering, like fashion-wise.
No, it's a pretty mixed bag, I think.
Yeah.
I think we all have our own style. I think all dander identities are valid except forehead mustaches.
Oh. Did you say dander identity?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is my dander identity for the day.
Okay.
Along with this. I have dander dysphoria. Are you mocking me?
Do you know? I mean, I worry about it too, especially on camera. With the black shirt on, a little dusting. I don't know.
Well, it's important to understand that I'm dander flux, so my dander identity does change day to day.
Flex or flux?
Flux.
Flex.
Flux. Flux.
Okay.
So it's like dander fluid, except it doesn't. There's no connection between the dander identities.
Okay. They're all disparate, but they are flex. That's what I'm saying. It's like a flux, right? They're little flakes, not flex. Flakes. Okay. Yeah.
No, they flux in and out. They fluctuate.
The quantum.
I guess I could say
dander.
fluctuate. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Don't be a transphobe.
I'm strands. Wait, what?
Is there like
well, especially in Britain, freaking Tories and the Whigs, they get all up in your grill.
Yeah, if I ever move to the UK, I'm going to be Whigs forever.
You're going to be
always
wig out.
Just a yellow dog wig voter.
Puff.
I have no idea which side is which.
Are you into wigs? Have you ever been to wigs? You wore a wig once on my show.
Twice. I think both times.
Okay, this isn't a wig. We're in the raw with you now. Sierra raw. Exulansic, unwigged.
It's the core part of my dander dysphoria is that I need these different dander prosthetics to express my dander identities.
If you can't reveal that part of yourself to the world without some sort of mediating influence, then it's fully your right to do so, to present as you feel you need to present. And as long as people are validating you in your presentation, then I guess
they're not. Insurance won't cover my dander identities. I'm having to use, I have to go to freaking Spirit.
Spirit?
Like Halloween. Yeah, the Halloween store.
Okay. Well, it's better than like raiding a cancer hair donation clinic.
No, it's not. I have equal right to the cancer wigs. Just because I don't have alopecia doesn't mean that I don't deserve the finest human hair wig. It's
I should have asked you to show up with a beard. We should have done an NB stream.
I still can't afford my dander affirming beard transplant either.
Transplant, huh? Oh, man.
Where the strands get transplanted.
Oh, they actually do that, don't they?
They do. And that's a lot of times people get misdiagnosed with gender dysphoria to get the beard transplant, but really they had dander dysphoria the whole time.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a crime. And
Yeah.
it's like psychology still pathologizes it. They call it dermatillomania. Like
They're
it's not a
internalized.
mania. It's an identity.
Okay. It's their internalized scalpelophilia.
Dander prosthetics have existed for thousands of years.
Have they though? Like Rogaine and
Probably. I
stuff?
don't know.
Okay. I just wondered what the Romans did with the bald head.
Well, I mean, Medusa wore snakes.
That's true.
That was her dander identity.
Yeah,
She
she went all the
rocked it.
way. Yeah.
Yeah. So
She
it's
stopped men
clearly
dead in
always
their
existed.
tracks. Yeah. She's a stone cold killer of dander. She's a dander goddess, isn't she?
Pretty much, yeah.
Do you have mythological dreams where you meet gods and monsters?
I'm sorry. What?
Do you have mythological dreams like where you meet gods and monsters? No?
I mean, it really depends on the day I've had.
Yeah.
But generally, I'm the god and the monster, and I'm just smiting the peasants. That's how I rest.
Okay. The peasants. You smite them.
Burninating the countryside
Okay.
in their thatched roof cottages.
Do you get far doing that? Does it bring you pleasure, or is it just like something that's necessary? That's just a part of your duty as a god monster.
I mean, kind of both, kind of both, because it depends on what century I'm smiting people in. Like I don't like people from the 12th century.
No.
I don't know why.
It's that
That's
great
just a
vowel
recurring
shift,
theme.
right? That's when it happened, right? 12th century.
Don't quiz me. It's been years.
Okay.
Surprised you even know about that.
I was talking to somebody about that. They brought it up, or I was reading about it. I think it's fascinating. I don't know why it happened or whatever. Oh, somebody was trying to explain why English is so messed up in the spelling. It's because like language kind of
Why it's
changed.
not heist and not what house and heist,
Well, it's not
but it's mouse
phonetic.
and
It's
mice.
got a like though, thou, tough, rough. Like the OUGH
Used to be
thing.
nicht.
Nicht. What is nicht?
Yeah, night.
Oh, nicht.
Yeah,
That is-
the GHs used to be pronounced.
That's
I
Germanic.
don't know if that was. I think so.
Nicht.
I miss historical linguistics.
Do you?
Who's my professor? It was Gary Holland, who's unfortunately since passed on. Great professor at Berkeley. It was like the only class that I went to every single office hour.
Really? Well, what's an office hour, just for context?
Oh, that's where you go to extra class outside of class. You don't have to go to just to hang out with the professor and ask questions.
What's his name again?
Gary Holland.
Gary Holland. I wonder if
It's more
there's any
correct to say
videos
Gary
of
the
him.
Netherlands, but he never liked it when I made that joke.
Gary Netherlands. Yeah. Gary Deutschman.
But like I said, he's passed on now.
I wonder if there's any videos of him.
Probably.
Yeah. And he taught historical linguistics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What were some of the things that stood out for you? Was it mostly English, or?
No, it was like how do we reconstruct languages?
Huh.
Using those methods and how do we know that this is what the language used to be like and what I mean we did talk about English a lot in the history of English, but just in general it's like there was a methodology to it that I found very fascinating and then used in another class we did we applied those methods to a language called Picuries, which is an indigenous language in Arizona, to try to reconstruct and otherwise translate. We had a section of text that was in the native language and in English, and our job for the semester was to describe it. Like how does this become that, and what are some theories about that? So I wrote a really long paper about the syllable weight that I had theorized based only on the text. We didn't have any audio recordings of the language.
How do you derive the syllable weight? What is syllable weight, and how do you derive it from a text?
So a syllable that's like ka is a lighter syllable than con, and that's a lighter syllable than kong. So it's just kind of like how many sounds are in the syllable.
Okay. Yeah.
Determines how heavy it is. and some languages will have rules about how heavy or light syllables have to be. So they might have a constraint against heavier syllables. And that's kind of part of the origin of accents. Like they just have a rule that you can't have heavier syllables. English can allow very heavy syllables, like strength.
That's one
It's a
word
really heavy syllable.
or one
Yeah,
syllable. Strength.
yeah. A lot of languages you're just not allowed to have syllables like that.
Such as what? What's an example of a?
Spanish, Tagalog,
So a
Turkish
lot
to
of
an
the Lat
extent, but Turkish allows heavier than Spanish does. Huh?
is Turkish Latin.
No, Turkish is Turkic,
Where
the
did that?
Turkic language family.
Okay. Oh, Turkic. Okay. So it's
Yeah,
this whole
there's a bunch
region.
of languages in the Turkic language family, and one of them is Turkish.
Okay. And did you study like the origin of that, like how it's distinct from, I guess, like the European, old Indo-European?
Yeah, yeah, we looked into that and influences. So there's a lot of loan words from Farsi and a lot of loan words from Arabic, um, but it's also not in those families.
Are are there such a thing as like loan, something other than the word, like loan constructions or loaned or absorbed, I guess phrases or grammars kind of stuff that kind of seep into languages?
Oh, sometimes grammars can be borrowed into other languages. There was a famous example of I'm not sure if it was exactly if it was Inupiaq or one of the kind of Arctic languages, or at some point, or Alaska Native, one of those. I forget exactly which one, but there was a merger where Russian fishermen came over and married a bunch of Native women, and instead of adopting their more complicated case ending system, they adopted the Russian case ending system into their language to make it easier for the husband. So
Oh, that was accommodating of them.
there's
Why do you
examples like
think?
that where you have language mergers happening.
Why do you think that? I guess this is really, it might be a stupid question because it's so broad, but why are rules there? Like where, why do rules emerge that, I guess on one level they police, correct grammar, whatever that is, but it seems like language is nothing other than rules or, so how do different languages, cap out how many rules they have, like you were talking about, like there's a rule around syllable weight, which is, it's not really intentional, right? It's just kind of like this emergent kind of, that's just not how meaning operates in this tongue, in this language.
And in general, rules are there to speed things up. And to one of the ways it speeds things up is making it easier to find words when you need them. Another way it speeds things up is to conspire to produce a more limited range of sounds that are part of the language. So languages sound like the language that they are. And that actually makes it easier to speak it. You don't end up with, they have limitations on what kinds of sounds can appear next to other sounds. And therefore you practice those more than other combinations. And you get better at them. There's also increasing redundancy to ensure that the message is communicated. In case you stutter or misspeak in some way, it's more likely that the other person will still understand the message if there's redundancy built into the grammar. And so there's like different parts of the sentence are both pointing back at the verb, for instance, or are both identifying that there has to be agreement. So like if I didn't hear the second part, I still heard the first part, and therefore I know that this word in the second part could only be certain words and not all of the words.
Huh.
So it's to speed things up and to make it more likely the message will get across.
Can you give an
Rapidly,
example
'cause
of redundancy, just in a sentence, like how?
So like verb agreement is an example of redundancy. Where if I didn't hear something, then I'm more likely to know that you meant the other thing.
Like
In a
pass
lot
me
of
the
languages,
salt,
there's
or don't go into the toilet.
like in Spanish, like la casa, the la and the on at the end of casa are is an example of redundancy. So
Okay.
if I hear the la, I know that even if it kind of got distorted, that you didn't mean something that ended in o because you said la at the beginning with a few exceptions, and then the adjectives also are agreeing, so the ending changes so that you have this redundancy. Um, Turkish has personal endings that go on the verb, so you're ending up saying something like I want I. So instead of like just I want, um, so that's some redundancy, and that also allows people to drop certain words if they don't want to say them without losing the message. Um, Zulu has a lot of class prefixes. Like I've heard, and I think this is just because there's a few subgroups within that language, but there's I've seen like 11 or 17 genders of words where the subject and the verb and the adjectives all have to agree in what gender they are. And it was too complicated, and I gave up after a semester. There was just too many. But I know that if I actually learned it or grew up speaking it, I'm sure it would be useful, or else it would speed things up.
Okay. So is there like kind of a limiting principle on how complex the rule set is for a language?
Eventually people will like not be able to keep up with it. So yeah,
Yeah.
evolutionarily. Um, and then our critical period for language development is, only so many years long. And so it's got to be something that's simple enough to learn in that period of time just through exposure. But if you just expose even pigeons to categories enough times, they will learn the category and be able to sort new things into it. I think Jordan Peterson, for instance, posted some meme about having flashbacks to French class and not being able to identify what gender a dishwasher was. But it's like, obviously, if you grew up speaking French, that would not be a hard problem. And that's because French actually has masculine and feminine gender. Like the genderists in English, they want us to believe that we just like look at people and we're arbitrarily sorting them into some kind of masculine, feminine gender. But we don't have gender, which is why objects don't have a gender, why that question doesn't make sense to us.
Mm-hmm.
Our gender is animate and inanimate. So we know what's an it and what's a he or a she. That's our gender split in English. But we don't have masculine and feminine except in fossils from Latin languages like boat. So
Yeah.
boats can be she. That's a fossil.
That comes from the female gender of a boat is a fossil from
Latin.
Oh, really? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I thought it's just because they're boats, and so of course they're she's, because they float when they're seemly. And they cut through the waves.
theory I've heard is that vehicles are she in general, although they're not always she because Spanish is L generally. But the theory I read was that like it's kind of like a pregnancy if you go inside of a boat. I don't know how much I believe in that, but it's by analogy to this split that exists in nature. But in English, when we're assigning he and she, it's a semantic assignment. It's not an arbitrary gender. It's because we know there's something actually male or female about the object, meaning the person.
Okay. So yeah, I'm trying to think of like calling my cats it. Like that just doesn't work for me to think of animals as not he or she's. Maybe bugs, but usually when we find a bug, we'll gender. We usually like
kids also in general. Like it has to do also with whether you can easily tell by looking at them whether it's a he or a she. Like so animals that are more easily sex differentiated by various factors, or presumably that we have things that we have personal relationships with, we're uncomfortable putting it into the inanimate class.
Yeah. Like
children and like pets. But bugs, for instance, even though they're clearly animate, they still get it. You can't really tell if it's a male or a female.
Don't you like she a spider when you find a spider in your house? Can you help me with her? You talk to your cat. Go eat her, please.
I don't think, unless it was clearly a black widow.
Yeah.
Black widow had probably she.
Okay.
But I can't remember the last time I ran into a black widow in my house.
Why do you think that? Speaking of languages, so the Romance languages have gender. English doesn't really have gender other than specific, this is a male, this is a female. Why do we not have that? And why do you think, do we know why gender is operative?
I think that's just kind of how the language evolved. We didn't really evolve to have that split and to assign things into that. that pathway. So Turkish also, they don't have animate or inanimate, and they also don't have masculine or feminine. So everything gets the same pronoun.
Okay.
But
Uh,
a lot of languages will have, like mentioned Zulu, they have a lot of categories. I think they have a specific gender for weather events, if I don't recall correctly.
so it's not gender anymore. Then it's some sort of
Gender means category. So
like
masculine and
genre
feminine are two
gender.
kinds. Yeah, they're two
Oh,
kinds of
duh.
categories.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Huh. So in a language like Zulu, that gendering of this phenomena, I guess it categorizes it, but it also gives it kind of a psychological weight, or it gives it some sort of flavor. Like if you're talking about weather events, like there's a relationship between man and the weather, and so it has its own category. I wonder if it forms some sort of emotional or psychological kind of boundary to the category to put it in its own
It
class.
must. It must have. Like there's a huge impact of culture. And I didn't get far enough in Zulu to really have much insight into that, but I do know that cultural color boundaries um, have an impact on your ability to perceive color differences. So people from colors that or cultures that group colors differently will have an easier time picking the odd one out of different color ones than people from other cultures.
Can you give an
So like
example, like on your shirt?
on my
Is it
shirt,
awkward? Yeah.
I think that there's some cultures, one culture that groups. I think they don't really differentiate too much between greens and browns or something like that. It's like they have like an earth tone category, and so they have a hard time picking out like the difference there. So if you had a row of colors where seven of them were the same and one of them was slightly different, they would be less reliable at picking out the one that was different than somebody from the U.S. and vice versa. There would be some splits where they'd be like easily able to sort that into a different category. And there's also differences in how languages deal with prepositions and what's the difference between in and on, for instance. There's been research into that.
Yeah, like there's a almost like a geometric uh, landscape that's different from language to language, or I guess relational. Like,
Like where you would draw the boundaries between like is butter in the knife? Is it on the knife? Is it around the knife? Is the ring on the finger? Is the ring in the finger?
huh,
Things like that, where it's like we have intuitions as English speakers, but those intuitions, if you show people pictures, they're not the same. And of course, like Spanish, will group them differently. So they just have kind of the one pronoun "en" for on and in, whereas we would split them up. So if they're learning English, they have a hard time learning where that category boundary is.
I wonder if that
Whereas I have a hard time knowing when to use por, like por in Spanish. It took me a while to get that por means both for and through. So it's got this double use. So you go for the street, whereas we would say down the street.
yeah, or uptown, up the town.
Mm.
Yeah. And I'm sure I was talking to Carl Benjamin, alias Sargon of Akkad, and he brought up something about English has there's something in the English language where we assign blame. And he didn't really get into it, and I didn't have him expand on that. But there's even just different ways of how we talk about human beings' actions and agency, right? Like how we speak about each other, or how we describe what we're doing and what other people are doing. The way we formulate that in our language kind of can formulate how we conceive of like crime, maybe even, or what's right and wrong, morality. Have you stumbled upon any of that, like how different languages conceive of good and bad, or something in that kind of
Hmm.
category?
I guess the one that's coming to mind is you would say I dropped it, but Spanish would say it fell, even if you dropped it. Could be an example. Um, yeah, that's one that's coming to mind.
Yeah. And have you seen or thought of any way that English itself, because what's going on in the gender world was kind of formulated or kind of implemented, particularly in, the West and in America, and then Britain is now like with the women kind of, which is more of a historical phenomenon because there's women's rights kind of history there. But I'm just wondering if gender is somehow related to our language or how it's manifested, has something to do particularly with English or with how we conceive of categories of gender. Have you?
So there's often this idea that I've heard that Spanish is sexist because of how much sex differences are then replicated throughout the language, and this idea that everything's either masculine or feminine. In my opinion, that actually kind of gets around a problem that English has, where Spanish, they have a male version and a female version of things. And English, we have kind of a normal version and a female version of things. And it's a very deeply embedded assumption that there's the normal version and then the female version.
So,
special case.
Yeah, what's kind of an example of that? Not just blonde and blonde, which are kind of French imports, but
lawyer and woman lawyer, doctor and lady doctor,
person and gentle person, or gentleman and
pig and a pig with a bow. Femaleness is marked. Femaleness is what sticks out.
Okay.
Femaleness is not default for some reason. We're the unusual case. And the fact that that's so embedded in the language and in assumptions, I believe, is related to the fact that it's, for instance, famously difficult to get medical equipment sized for female hands, even though, like, I think there's an article I read once on the issue of like boots for nurses in surgery and doctors in surgery, where it's like it doesn't come in their size, and it's actually kind of important. But like that's just a very pervasive problem, and it has to do with culture. And the culture being historically more patriarchal, trending towards more egalitarian. But, if we had started from a more matriarchal trending towards more egalitarian, we would have the opposite. We would have femaleness would be normal and maleness would be marked. Maleness would be the suspicious other. We could have a system where everything was marked. But I do think that is a deeply ingrained problem in English. And even in Romance languages, I don't think that it's truly like neutral, because you still have the bias where a group of mixed sex people is male, because you don't want to mark people unnecessarily. And so if you refer to them with a group of mixed sex equals female nouns, that marks the males. And you don't want to mark the unmarked. So you just don't mark the marked.
Mm-hmm. Is that mark necessarily negative? I mean, it could be like depending on the situation, it could be like an elevation of the marked as something special, set apart, sacred, rather than other.
Sometimes I do think it's important to mark. Yeah. So one problem I have with the push to de-gender everything is that it actually is very significant that femaleness gets marked because we have specific needs. So I don't know that we want a situation where that's necessarily good for women, that we're not marked. But the question is, do we want to have an unmarked category? Is there a way to mark maleness in the same way? I think that's a much better answer than trying to unmark females. But that's what especially the non-binitarians are seeking to do. They want to unmark femaleness. Yeah. They don't want females to be treated as females. They want to be able to opt out. That's actually quite dangerous for females to not have our needs acknowledged and respected, because we have different biological needs that can be life-threatening if not treated as special and different with our own spaces, for instance.
Mm-hmm. So an analogy would be female sports and then open category would be a way to, that's one situation in which the marked makes sense according to you as not as necessary or a positive mark.
I think that the maleness needs to be equally marked as femaleness. We need to stop seeing males as default. We need to actually have two different marks for the different groups.
So there would be.
I don't think anyone's
Man's
Yeah.
basketball and women's basketball, not just basketball and women's basketball.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is what we have now, NBA and WNBA.
Oh, so they did put them in? They marked it?
I've never heard it called MMDA. Is that MNBA?
I
Is
don't
that a
know.
thing?
Let me check my drug cabinet. Maybe I have some in there, but MMBA, MMMDA, MMDA.
That's what the hats are for.
They are.
For the
So
after party.
it's a. So this is my kind of wariness to be gender critical, because I think that gender is actually a useful category, and it's necessary, and it has implications, and you can pack a lot of meaning into masculine and feminine that actually are positive to society, not just completely negative to society. You can say that a woman is a type of human being, and there's a lot of similarities between the male type of human being and the female type of human being, but there's also a lot of differences, and those differences do have impacts on behavior. And so boys need to kind of learn certain things about self-restraint, let's just say, which would be a good thing to teach boys, but you would need to have some sort of idea of masculinity, this aspirational masculinity, like a man is a provider, a man is, a gentleman and is differential to women and is there to protect and not to, overpower women. And a man has to be, just like a kind of a chivalrous kind of cultural expectation. And that category of masculinity, I think it can be a positive thing. So I don't think that if we tore apart gender and made everything, just you can be whatever you want to be, is necessarily good at scale, right? It's good for like individuals. Like, you can, if you want to play with this toy or that toy, or want to be a tomboy or this or that, but at scale, there's just patterns of behavior. Women kind of act differently, especially in groups, and males do.
I think that people get confused because in our species, males and females look pretty similar because of sexual selection and because we evolved to cooperate. So we've evolved to basically be the same size and look very similar. But we're very fundamentally different. And so I've made the argument that we are as different as two kinds can be, as two species can be without actually being different species. We're genetically different. We're developmentally different. We're distinct. And so we can't lose that knowledge in the quest to imagine some kind of pre-sexual human. People think that like there's some core human that then splits into either male or female, but I don't think that that's a good way of looking at it.
How would you imagine it in a better way?
There are males and females.
And they come together to create more males and females. They can like bounce off each other through
and
time.
Males evolved from females.
Do we?
Yeah. The Y chromosome is evolved from the X chromosome. Females are the member of the species that bears young. If there is prior to sexual dimorphism, there are females only, because their females are the ones that bear young. So, and then males evolved to facilitate sexual reproduction.
Okay.
But on an evolutionary scale, long before we were humans, females were here first.
So we can argue about the chicken and the egg, but not the cock.
Female.
Yeah. Like it's a non sequitur to say. Yeah, well, did the cock come before the chicken or the egg?
Prematurely.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So what are the developmental differences? Because that, I think, can be kind of a neutral and interesting kind of way to build the argument and sustain the argument that gender's a important category.
Well, people have lots of opinions about what the developmental differences are. For sure. We can talk about what's the most common traits, most common pattern you'd like. Which should be that you have a genetic split, and then that causes developmental differences across the lifespan, which result in one of two functional fertile categories that are then mutually fertilizable. So those are the two that evolution has acted on. And so those are the the problem I have with the impulse to try to change your sex is that there's this assumption that the difference between males and females is rooted in hormones, because that's what the main driver of the appearance differences. But there's a lack of understanding, a lack of recognition that given how old the sex split is and how old that sex split has been tied to something like testosterone, which is for an extremely long time, if not forever, because there's analogs of that in plants, I believe even.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what Google had said anyway. But I haven't studied it in that great a
There's a
depth.
roid bush out there somewhere, just like
That something like that, some sterile type analog drives that differentiation in plants somehow. But it's definitely in birds too. The famous fader males look like that because of modifications to their testosterone sensitivity. But you have that split. But there's a lack of recognition that the genetics evolved to pull against those tendencies. So when you switch it up, that's actually a problem. It's not neutral.
Wait, say that again?
For instance, male genetics evolved to pull against the testosterone that evolution expected to be there. So it's an optimization problem, a multifactorial problem with a range of solutions. But fundamentally, you have genes that, for instance, in the pancreas, evolved to be able to cope with higher levels of testosterone. So it's pulling against the effect of testosterone on the pancreas, whereas female genetics did not evolve to that. And so female pancreases don't like testosterone.
Oh, no.
For genetic reasons.
Probably because there's so much energy that would be wasted by developing androgen resistance in a pancreas if it wasn't going to be exposed to androgens.
For whatever combination of genetic and then developmental history, the female pancreas is not like even moderately high levels of testosterone. So there's been a lot of research into polycystic ovarian syndrome and the elevated testosterone that causes, which is far below cosmetic doses of testosterone. It doesn't like it. There are much higher rates of diabetes because the testosterone causes the islet cells to basically die.
Oh, no.
And otherwise malfunction and become inflamed. And so it's just no good.
Do you think that Planned Parenthood and the informed consent brochure that they hand out to the testosterone-seeking females says, you might higher risk of diabetes?
Actually, yeah, it tends to.
Okay,
that's one of the things it does tend to say is things like liver injury, diabetes, and heart attack are the risks that they usually mention. And they generally don't mention the cancer risk.
What's the cancer risk? How?
Just testosterone's a known carcinogen.
Okay.
As is estrogen. But
This
again, our
right
genetics evolved to
is known to the state of California to cause cancer.
It's your carcinogenic beard.
Yeah.
Men die earlier than women.
We do. That's the end of our developmental difference.
The liver, for instance, too, the SRY gene is known to make you guys way more susceptible to liver injury. So it's not just the testosterone either.
Liver injury, like how? Like getting punched? Or?
Like if you get hepatitis, I think.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's more damaging. If I recall the literature review I did correctly.
But there's a trade-off, of course. There's a reason why we have testosterone, even though it is such a kind of toxic substance, to quote James Cameron.
Yeah, fertility.
Fertility and virility, a wide host of things. Muscle mass, speed, impulsive
I guess you guys can do other stuff.
Yeah. No, we can punch each other and jump off bridges. Do it all the time.
Why don't you film it?
Well, we do that too. There's a whole Reddit called "Hold My Beer." It's evolutionary.
Oh, that's a great Reddit. Have you seen "Hold My Feeding Tube"?
Oh no, I think I have. It's been a while though.
As an SLP, I prefer that one.
As an SLP, what does that mean? Speech
language pathologist.
Okay.
I do feeding tube stuff sometimes.
Okay, so then you get your not your rocks off, but you appreciate okay, well, yeah, I
Yep,
know how to.
He's gonna need a feeding tube.
Yeah.
most
Wow.
certainly.
Okay. She's came off. Reddit went downhill. I don't know. I think it was after the Trump presidency or the lead up to the 2016 election. It just got carpet bombed by all the politicians, and then it just kind of became a cesspool of radical left-wing thought. What's your relation to it? I go there, but I filter it just for usefulness.
I mean, I've definitely enjoyed a few subreddits, and then I do a Reddit Chronicle series where I go into like the trans subreddits. They recently banned metoidioplasty, which was a sad day.
Is that a user or like an operation that you get?
It was a subreddit. It's an operation, which is where they give you a micropenis.
From
like
the flesh
sewing
of
up a girl's or woman's. No, they just kind of like so you take testosterone.
Yeah.
And then the clitoris grows.
Goes.
Yeah, and then they go and kind of gouge it out.
Yeah.
And then it pops up. They call it releasing, a simple release.
Okay, a simple release.
And then sometimes they'll take like the labia, or sometimes they'll take the vagina. Like they scoop it out. They call it jack-o'-lanterning.
Okay. The doctors do, or the Redditors do?
Oh, that came from a TikTok.
Okay.
A woman's talking about how like I call it jack-o'-lanterning. It's an infamous TikTok that I re-upload from time to time as needed. But then they use that tissue to like lengthen the urethra, which often fails. And then at that point they'll go in and they'll gouge out your mouth. I guess jack-o'-lantern your mouth, and then they use that tissue to try to do it. But at the end of it, if it all works out, then you get kind of like this sort of angry inch that you might be able to pee through.
Okay.
That's a metoidioplasty.
But it has all the sensitivity of a clitoris?
I doubt it. I really doubt it.
So,
especially since sometimes they talk about moving it, so that would involve severing it and moving it.
Okay.
It certainly is if they don't move the actual clitoris and they don't sever the nerve, then yeah, it would have more sensitivity, most likely, than a phalloplasty, where they're actually trying to like, they talk about trimming the dorsal nerve and then basically soldering the arm nerve and the arm skin to it and then burying it.
Why was the subreddit banned? I can't understand why Reddit would want to be.
It was unmoderated.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly
Wild West of
what happened there. I guess they had too many complications.
Okay. Reddit, it is very fascinating, and in a lot of the GC Twitter, you get to see. There's a few accounts that post the confessions of the things that are going on in Reddit. What's become normalized, like some very not normal behavior, is kind of championed. It's such a interesting phenomena. I know there's several people that are studying it, but you can get your lulz on it.
I get banned from certain subreddits real fast.
You've never been banned.
You've never been banned?
You've never been banned. Have you been banned?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I got banned from rFallow for commenting on one picture of a complication. I just said walk it off. Instantly banned.
Yeah, no, that wasn't compassionate.
I had a good comment for a gender cynical, and they still like called me an asshole and banned me.
What's that?
It wasn't even being like gender cynical is like. Well, I don't know how you would describe it. They're kind of like trans people that want to think of themselves as gender critical, but they don't like gender criticals. Yeah. They definitely don't like me, apparently.
Well, you're controversial.
What?
You are controversial. Yeah, no. Sorry to break it to you. But why do you think that, why do you trigger them?
Hilarious, by the way.
What? Who are?
The hate threads about me.
In where? In Reddit?
Various places. I'm not going to direct people to them.
Okay. Yeah. What have you learned
from? It's so confusing. Somebody said I had Sanpaku eyes. I definitely don't have Sanpaku eyes.
What's Sanpaku eyes? Is that the
Sanpaku eyes? That's it's Japanese for third white. Sanpaku. It's basically like what's her name? Billie Eilish. Whatever. The white, yeah, exactly. The whites under the eye, if they're visible. Yeah, that is also the Sanpaku eyes. But usually it means like it's under the eye. But like I've got kind of like more on the beady end of the spectrum. I'm good. The 27 club for me. Supposedly you die early if you have Sanpaku eyes.
Really? Oh, it's a whole curse and stuff. It's like a
Yeah.
genetic marker of, okay, short life. Okay. I'll try not to, I'll try not to do it.
Well, I think you're safe from this 27 club, if I recall correctly. You
What's the
turned 30
27?
last year, right?
Oh yeah, no. Yeah, well, totally. 32 actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
happy birthday.
I'm getting up there. I'm going to be 50 pretty soon here.
Wow. That's
I'll
quite a
be,
jump.
yeah,
Are
no,
you
it
aging
is.
logarithmically?
Yeah, some sort of exponential thing. It has to do with this creek that I was bathed in as a child for some sort of baptism, but there was some sort of element in there that just jumps me through time like rapidly. I stay 28 for 20 years, and then all of a sudden I'm 50. So
Wow.
that's what I'm on my second stage of life right now, and then the third one I'm just going to kind of turn into a decrepit, tetchy, short-tempered bus driver. Kind of looking forward to it, but I'm not going to look like I look now.
Did you see that bus video that's been going around where the
Oh
kid
no.
was like beating on the other kid?
Yeah, it was really
Oh, that
interesting.
was wild. What would you have
Yeah.
done?
That wouldn't have flown on my bus, but I don't work with the kind of kids. You probably would have known that that was going to happen in that environment. So you'd have to look. It's a systemic issue if that's happening, and by
Mm.
systemic I mean just like it's a culture like of in the bus. Like you can tell like the attitude of the kids, and you can tell when there's tensions. And if it get you could tell that it was going to be anywhere close to there, but I didn't see the whole video. I just saw the large male trouncing the small female. But apparently the female was teasing his brother or something. There's like some other background. So I don't know the whole thing, but as like a authority figure, you should be able to know that that was going to happen unless you're just in an area where that just happens, where the violence is kind of just there. Do you deal with violence, diffusing it, seeing it happen?
Uh, very rarely.
Okay.
And it's usually directed towards me if it's happening at all, because sometimes I'll work with kids who their hitting is their communication.
Yeah.
I obviously don't work with people large enough where that would be a problem for me. Like, there's certain adults I can't work with, and that's unfortunate, just because of stuff stuff and things.
Mm.
And occasionally, when I was doing groups in the school, there would be some issues, but rarely. Fortunately, that's not really something I've had to deal with.
Yeah. Me neither. I have interacted with a handful of psychopathic children, which is really interesting. Like, wow, you're too young to be a psychopath, but you're a total psychopath. This is interesting. I'm going to teach you to not be a psychopath or bury it very deep down because it's not acceptable to be a psychopath.
Does it work?
It takes a while to convince a kid that when you pick up a stick, you can use it for something other than penetrating the body of your colleague, right? Of poking or whacking people. There's other things you can do with it. You can draw with it. You can pretend that it's a guitar. You can do all these other things with it. But like the kid would see, there's just one kid that I worked with. He would see any object, and I started recognizing, like it was just like a pattern recognition. Like I just have to go. He was 4, so he's pretty mobile, very articulate. His dad's a criminal too, so there was just kind of something in him that was just anti-social. And, so there was some construction happening, like the hippies in Portland were building some sort of mud hut. They had this whole project where they were going around to parks and making these mud things that were organic, and then they just melted and became these huge messy piles and nobody dealt with them anymore. But they were building this little shrine to the earth goddess, and Bryson went over and picked up a stick, or gave him a stick. The hippie guy gave him a stick, and I took the stick away. And the hippie guy gave me a lecture about let the boy play with stuff. I'm like, if I give him the stick, he's going to go right over to that girl, and he's going to whack her over the head. That he's going to do that, like for whatever reason. So you'd have to talk to him, and vary how to what extent do I show anger? To what extent do I not show anger? And communicating like when we're doing something wrong, as opposed to doing something that's not wrong. Anger is a useful tool, even though you have to use it wisely. But as a man in that environment, that's one of the tools that I have to draw on, like kind of a deeper register, kind of like not exerting physical force, but making it known that I'm the strongest person in the room, and that you can't. Like that my physical strength vastly outweighs yours. So you're not gonna use yours to hurt other people because mine's gonna stop it. So
Guess you could always go get the bus if you needed it.
get the bus, run them over.
Just, yeah, just nudge them, left tap, let them know.
No, it's really sad when a kid breaks you, snaps you. Like, yeah, they won. They got you to lose your temper, and you're like, dang it, you won. You little shit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard working with behavior kids sometimes.
Especially when you're trying to, especially with communication. If a kid cannot communicate, they don't have any other way to express the chaos that they feel or sort out their chaos without language. So it's really, like, anger is one of the things that they use. What's your experience of when a kid doesn't have communication? Like, what other tools do they have? And
It definitely depends on like I've worked with some kids who they're so traumatized by their lack of ability to communicate with language that asking them to do language tasks brings out a bunch of behaviors like screaming or pushing or grabbing or otherwise communicating that they're terrified of this task. They don't want to do it. Other kids just kind of check out and they don't try to have a back and forth with you. And so I've had some kids where the initial therapy that got through to them was literally just reflecting whatever facial expression they were making back at them until they figured out that I could see them. Like they just like literally had never made that had never clicked for them. And you wonder about their earlier experiences because the kid I'm thinking of was like far past the age where you would expect that to have developed.
yeah,
And it did not take many sessions to get that to click. It's like, and after that, he started like refusing and requesting and actually trying to interact, whereas before he was just kind of like led around and just wanted to fidget all day with this toy. And people had trained him to make a certain number of like complex sentences on an iPad, but like he wasn't like spontaneously using the iPad because he didn't understand that we could see him fundamentally.
yeah.
And then other kids have learned that they can control the interaction by resisting and refusing. And like, it blows their mind if you teach them that behavior gets you to like stop interacting with them because they expect that you're going to keep interacting with them. And so if they realize that you might just like get really quiet and close your eyes or turn around for like 10 seconds and then turn back, like that can do so much. Like it's the theory of mind thing. They don't see that you're not a mechanistic part of their environment.
Yeah.
They think they can control you. So you have to figure out what their model is and break it in a way that doesn't hurt them. You really just defy their expectations in a way that gets them to figure out that like you're animate. You can see them back and you can think about them.
There's a principle, I always forget what it's called, but it's a psychological principle where you variate your responses. I learned it when I was being a barista in Chicago, and I was really flirty and witty. But I realized that if I just was disconnected, when every day somebody would get their coffee and I would be like this happy chippy guy. But if I kind of variated my mood, like it caused some sort of interpersonal friction where they would start to recognize me less as this caricature, more as like a real human being. But then that moves on and applies to working with kids, like if you getting them to realize that you're not an extension of their environment. And one of the first videos that I ever put on YouTube was just about the meaning behind please and thank you isn't just a formal it's not just some sort of routine thing that we're trying to, have kids have manners. It's like, no, you are a human being that is helping me get what I want, which is milk, right? So I recognize you as a human being by saying thank you or by saying please, like saying that, that those are indications of agency. And then that once you build that into
handing them something and not letting go when they take it is a good one. Because then they're like
a $20 bill
or a piece of paper or something, just like until they look up at you.
Yeah.
Like that's how I teach eye contact is I just hold an item that they want and I don't let go until they like look at my face and then they get it. And then they learn, oh, looking at the face does something.
Yeah. Why is
And
eye
then they
contact so
start figuring,
important?
well, you get a lot of messages about your conversation partner from their facial expression. And then the conversation partner is able to see your facial expression. And there's just communication that happens. But it can feel very intimidating if you're on the autism spectrum. And I wouldn't force it. You have to condition it so that it stops being painful.
Yeah.
And some kids are not going to get there because of their comorbidities. It also takes there's some kids, but some kids just haven't gotten over the fear of it, and some kids like just don't see the point of it. So it depends on what flavor of autism you're dealing with to an extent. But if you can teach them that like looking at your face gets them the thing they want, then they're more likely to look at your face next time. And then over time, because they're looking at your face more, they will learn more things. Because in infants, we know that they don't localize to the face the way that neurotypical infants do. So they've taken videos of people moving around and making noise, and they've reduced them down to moving points of light that kind of like they're just points of light, but they're moving according to like where the joints are basically in the body. And neurotypical infants will focus on the parts of the points of light that don't have a face, but would be where the face is. And their gaze focuses up there. Whereas autistic infants that are later diagnosed with autism, they look at when the sound and the movement seems to line up.
Huh.
So it's a very different developmental path very early on. So they're not getting as much exposure to the face because it's just not something they're localizing to. So you have to, that's the therapy is to train them to pay attention to faces so that they can start learning about what it means when the face moves.
So do you know why the pattern recognition of the neurodivergent child is looking at movement and sounds? It sounds like a pattern recognition, just not even really an error, just like a completely, like you said, different pathway. So I'm just wondering what's the pathology there? Why?
It's related to I believe it's related to the language deficit. I'm not an autism expert. I have expertise in social pragmatics and in language development. But my working model of it is that it's as someone that's studied autism extensively, just as a layperson, and we also covered it in school. But just to be clear, a psychologist would be the expert in that as a disorder. But my working model of it is that they're not developing schema, they're not developing complex, like multi-layered schema, so they don't see the face as like its own thing.
Yeah.
That has specific kinds of information coming out of it. So then it's not very interesting. They're still trying to figure out how sound and light connects and movement connects. They're putting the pieces together without forming complexes. They don't see eye movement and and mouth movement as being somehow related. They just developmentally they don't develop that schema of this is a face. Everything is just points of light moving. And they're trying to figure out the whole picture.
Yeah.
And we don't entirely know why that is.
Yeah. Have you seen a preponderance? Sorry, go on. Mm-hmm. You can see what?
Oh yeah, just you can see how the kids on that pathway would end up with a lot of insight into how things work, because that's what they're paying attention to.
Yeah. It seems like there's a preponderance of autism, or maybe not, but it's kind of a trope that we see a lot of autism online, and especially in activist communities, and in the transgender community, it seems like there is a comorbidity with rapid onset gender dysphoria and some form of autistic trait. Do you have any idea on that, or how gender would be some sort of schema that is adopted for social purposes or for other purposes? Why gender is so quickening to the autistic mind?
I think that there's a number of ways you could approach that problem. Core to autism is a social pragmatic deficit. They don't really understand why you say what, when you say it, how you say it, to who, and there are different expectations on the basis of sex. and they may be aware of that much. And so if you're prompting them to kind of think about that. And so it's a whole new world of like understanding how people interact. And so, in addition to that, it's a preferred topic. So if you have a problem with conversation, you have a conversational deficit. One way that people cope with that is by having a preferred topic that they talk about all the time. And then they don't, then they can situate themselves. And of course, I'm doing that now as a teacher student kind of dynamic. And then the conversation becomes more predictable to them. Whereas peer to peer, it doesn't really work. And they can practice a conversation and get better at it. But the skill doesn't really generalize. So I think it's kind of the confluence of that. And then within activist communities, it's also a preferred topic. We all want to talk about how to solve this problem. So it's a way we can all get around the fact that we're a bit socially inept in other ways. I'm no exception.
Me neither.
Couldn't tell from the hat.
It's the hat and my aging algorithm. Super socially inept. Actually, for some reason,
Cancer beard.
My state of California cancer beard.
You got a growth on your face.
No, I do have several. I have like a little red one up here. If you can see it, a little red guy.
What?
A little red.
No, I can't see it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. You're looking at. I don't know. It's over there. When I do the actual high definition video, you'll be able to see it.
Oh, thank goodness.
The social dynamics. I spoke with Caroline Farrell, and the interview didn't quite work out, and I want to have her back on. But she's a British activist, been in the news and in trouble and hounded by the gender activists for many a year at this point. But we talked a lot about autism and about her experience with it, and she thought that she might be autistic, but doesn't really matter because she's in her 40s now, and being diagnosed with it's not really going to help her because she already figured out like what she needs to do. But we broached a topic of across the internet, there's just this kind of this autistic personality that's driving a lot of the activism stuff, both in the feminist circles and then in the trans circles too. And if we don't have an awareness of that social ineptitude, then if we do have an awareness of that, it kind of can explain certain behaviors and might help us to make it more efficient, like kind of like a language, get better rules in place to make communication on the internet more efficient in order to achieve political means, or in order to discover the truth, in order to facilitate community, right? I'm just wondering, in your experience, or like over the past few years, interacting with the internet in such a way that you gain a lot of attention, you're very good at gaining attention, and then receiving a lot of negative and positive attention, how you've kind of developed the model of like the mass or the hive that you're dealing with, just all those disembodied voices. Like if there's a model that you've been able to develop, or that you've seen, if you take this model or this attitude towards it, like it works better for you, or it's more predictable, or you get what you want out of it. And by what you want doesn't just mean like selfish gains, but like achieve the goal of, diminishing the surgical intervention of children around the gender topic or something like that.
It's a very broad question.
Very
like jokes. Jokes has been my best way of getting attention throughout my life.
Yeah. People respond to it. People love your humor.
Well, even so, if you have a person where people, thank you, if you remove the facial nerve and you can no longer voluntarily smile, but something's funny, people can smile again. But they can't do it on purpose, and the nerve isn't there anymore.
What?
So there is something very activating that grabs you about humor.
Yeah.
They can cause people to move who otherwise literally can't move. No, it's a thing that they taught us about at school.
Wow.
That's at least sometimes the case where if you remove the facial nerve, there's another pathway that can trigger those muscle movements that we don't fully understand. Music is another thing that can really grab people. So I've worked with any number of people with aphasia and made aware of them through their education, things like that. It's just a thing. There's melodic intonation therapy can really help developmental issues. but it can also help people who've lost language. So I've had encounters with people who can only say a few stereotyped phrases, even after a lot of therapy. But if you sing a song that they know, that they learned before the injury, they can sing along with you perfectly. It's wild. So it's just there's something about that emotional experience. Like it really gets to your emotional core, and that's what branches out to everything else. Versus your actual language functions are more on the periphery. But so much of social language is tied to emotions. So if you think of it like as a keyboard, and the different pitches are tied to different expressions, like help might be one particular key. And so if you have autism, you don't know how to process internal sensations, and that's kind of the origin of not knowing what to say.
You don't know how to process internal sensations? Could you unpack that briefly?
Well, I mean, it's on a spectrum, but yeah. So at the low end of the spectrum, they don't know how to process sensations like I need to go to the bathroom. And so even if you teach them how to say that phrase, even if they have the capacity, they may not be able to say it when they need to say it because they can't translate their internal feelings into words.
Okay. Huh.
But then at the high end of the spectrum, it's people who have we're very intelligent and bright, but they behave in ways that are very confusing because they don't know how to say things like, I feel really stressed out. I need to talk. I need help. They just don't understand that. So they think that they need to act it out. That makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's too big for them to handle because they don't have that ability to process and translate in a way that's useful both for them. They can't translate themselves to themselves, but then as a result, they can't translate themselves to other people either. But they still have these big emotions that they're trying to figure out what do I do in response to this feeling?
Yeah.
They don't know what to do. It's a pragmatic deficit, so they do the wrong thing, even if they seem like they're very intelligent.
The spurging out is the colloquial term in a way. Some people call it spurging out. People do it on the internet.
I'm familiar with that phrase.
In a while, yeah.
I've never done
it a couple times. No. The internet, so it's interesting because it's difficult to at once take it seriously and not take it seriously. Like to have a model of it that because we are making so many human connections virtually. We're making friendships. We're building bridges and burning them down, and yet we're doing it virtually. So kind of being in this world that is parasocial, they call it. It's kind of fake. It's virtual, but at the same time, there's so much realness in it, and that level of disjointedness, as well as like the volume of like you can make a statement and it can just travel around the world. Your image just can go anywhere. So it's some people talk about internet literacy and stuff, and a lot of people bemoan the internet for what it's doing to young people, and it is kind of changing our brains, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. We just don't really understand the technology and what it's doing to us yet, and so we're kind of just experimenting and trial and error, kind of figuring out who I am through this medium, or what this is, what my relationship is to me.
I mean, it's wild. It's wild. You upload a 30-second video on TikTok that's a random story that was just all a big build up to a big letdown. And that was like the first time I went viral on TikTok was the story about where it was this whole build up to this guy outside of my dorm in like the dead of winter in the middle of the night, like drunk in a forest that was like set up with different, like the forest surrounding the Middle East Technical University was built by the U.S. military. They built it in rows for some reason, so you can see down it in any direction, and it's like guarded by the Turkish military. And so you're not allowed to like have boys in your dorms. And so this guy didn't even go to the school, but we were supposed to go out the night before, and like he like stood me up and then shows up at 5 a.m. and it's like I said, it's January. There's snow on the ground. They'd built bars on the first floor so that you couldn't sneak people in, but they built them horizontally for some reason, so it was just a ladder. Anyway, I let him in.
Okay.
That was the story. It went viral.
Okay,
This
and
whole
you,
thing built up.
there wasn't like a raid
I
on
got
your
like
little.
1,200 followers in like a day, and it was like I had like 4 followers. It was like my first. I just downloaded the app. I was like, "What the hell is this app?"
Huh.
There's so many people like this. So yeah, just good times.
And then what caused you to do it again? Was it just kind of like addictive or curious? Like, oh, what can I do with this crazy little piece
Yeah,
of fire in
basically.
my pocket? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, that was basically it. It was just like oh my gosh, I can actually just respond to comments, and it's my face. I'm not just another commenter. I can be the center of attention. This is great. I want to see what I
Attention.
can do with this. I think the one that went the most viral was literally it was an eagle flying two men between two men with their foreheads touching,
Okay.
and there was like no context to this other video. It was so weird. It was like these two men had their foreheads touching, their eyes closed, they were like smiling. This freaking eagle flies through them and lands on a hand and like eats the meat on the hand. And so I just stitched it, and I was like, I don't know what gender identity was just revealed, but I'm in favor because it looked like a gender reveal. I don't, or what gender was just revealed. You don't think it's that identity. Anyway, I got like 400,000 views. Like two. It was just this app. What is this? What is
Yeah.
this app? And then I did my turf speech at one point, and that went viral.
What
So
what
it's
was
just
the
like
turf speech?
I had someone had asked me to explain the difference between category and spectrum and why that was important for language because I had mostly done language TikToks because I really like explaining stuff.
Yeah.
And so through my examples, and I kind of knew that this might hit a
Ruffle.
third rail of sorts,
Yeah.
but I kind of wanted to anyway. So my examples were that a categorical difference would be like men and women have different heart attack symptoms. And the spectral difference is that the LGBTQIA seems to be trying to include the entire community in the acronym. And that I thought that you can't include that spectrum. You can't represent the spectrum categorically. It didn't make sense. And that we should integrate as a community over here, integrate the spectrum under one term and not keep subdividing. And so I'd use that and it's like 500 people called me a turf immediately. And so I gave a speech about how like, we can't, like, this is actually very dangerous to try to erase the knowledge that men and women had different heart attack symptoms. We shouldn't erase that knowledge because it's not just a function of testosterone. It's not just a function like the heart has different proportions, different sizes, different stretchinesses. It's a multifactorial problem. Okay. And so we need to understand that we can't make our language so perfect that we erase the knowledge that women are medically different from men. That's bad. And so that went viral on like turf Twitter or something, I guess. And then a lot of people, then I just started kind of making turf content on TikTok and leaned into that until I got banned. But I almost got to 10,000 and then I got banned. Like that was my most popular content, but it seems like ever since I've tried to get back on there, I just get shadow banned immediately.
Oh, really? Huh. I
Yeah,
wonder
app
why.
doesn't work as well as it used to.
Huh.
I think I'm just known, so people just mass report as soon as I find it gets sent to certain discords, and I think they seem to operate on a sort of social credit system. So just like it doesn't matter whether
Yeah.
your video gets put back up, you get dinged either way if the teenagers don't like you. So I've tried like having other accounts now that I'm trying to like do very apolitical content and trying to do the same strategy I did before, which is where I got like several thousand followers using just jokes and humors and linguistic stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm also spending a lot of time on YouTube now lately and otherwise making the longer form content for the other platforms. So it's like I'm not like before it was just TikTok. So I was, but I think that strategy might eventually work again. I'm using new devices. So you can get around it. It's fun. It's fun. It's fun trying to figure out how these different apps work too. I like reverse engineering.
Yeah. Problem to be solved. What's your intentional strategy on YouTube now? You were banned about a year ago, was it, or a year and a month or something like that? And
It's exactly a year today.
oh, really? Wow, that is coincidental. I didn't know that. Okay, but then you came back, and you haven't been shadow banned or anything like that.
Right. I was back for 6 months on another one. So
Okay, and then you got nuked again.
Yes.
Oh,
And I think I know how, but I'm not going to say.
okay. Well,
But now I'm back again.
my question is, being kicked off a platform and then returning, is there like, okay, well, what am I doing here? Like, do you kind of like, is it kind of like a reset on like what your project is, or like the dimensions of what you're doing, or
I
what
have
you're
different
using?
strategies every time. Sure.
Okay.
Trying to test theories.
Oh, okay. Are you talking about like meta, like how I go about talking about this, or what kind of content in order to achieve a goal, or playing with the algorithm, or do you mean like just within the content itself? You're working on different strategies.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm more thoughtful about what content I put on YouTube versus whether I put the full thing or just a preview that I think is more friendly.
yeah.
So,
And what are you thinking at this point is your focus? Like where are you headed, or what are you trying to describe or figure out?
I mean, I'm still kind of doing similar stuff I've always done, is just kind of like finding people on Clock app and watching their horror stories. I had one that went viral recently called the hot dog with no hallway.
Oh no.
It's the phalloplasty files.
Oh no. The hot dog with no hallway?
Yeah.
What does that mean? Do I want to know?
So they had like a straw basically in their arm for like
Okay.
6 months trying to make a urethra, and then the whole thing got like taken off and rolled up and stitched on, and that was there for like several more months, and then they took out the straw,
Okay.
and then she had one real solid standing to pee, because that's the goal, is the holy trans rite of standing to pee.
Okay.
And it was like a deal with the devil. So she didn't specify how often how long in her life she wanted to stand to pee. She just asked to stand to pee. And so she got it one time, and then everything, I guess, kind of crunched up. And then they had to like go back in and give her another catheter. And so there was no hallway in her hot dog.
Okay.
But then, and she keeps comparing it to a hot dog. I'm not even saying that just to be mean. Like that's
Okay.
her freaking analogy over and over again. And her doctors, apparently. It's
All right.
wild.
It's better than wiener, I guess. No, it's not. Sausage would be
Then
preferable.
they went and like potato peeled her cheek
Oh no.
to get more tissue.
Okay.
And they're like, they made, but for some reason, like they couldn't seal it up. So it's like, she keeps saying like it's open like a hot dog bun.
Okay.
And it's just open like that. It's
So
going to
it's
be
kinda
like
like
that for 6 months. Did it somehow heal?
Like one of those things, like in the gold rush era, that they'd build to silt out the gold. It's just like this kind of this.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, basically.
The shoot.
And then like in the process, she's like lost the ability to make a kissy face. She's like about to get married too.
Okay.
She can't do this. Because they damaged it, I guess.
Okay.
She can't like eat the food that she wants to eat. But she has no regrets. Never, no regrets. Best thing she ever did.
No regrets. Wow.
And like they're planning to try to seal it up like a month before her wedding. And it's just like, your doctors are just mean. Like, I can't imagine like signing up for that. It's just such a nightmare. Like, so I spliced in the "Always Look on the Bright Side of Life" song from The Life of Brian. You know that one?
Yeah, I know that one.
Because she's like, it's just going to be a bump in the road. Anyway, so that one, like, it's only been up a week, but it's already like 17,000 views, which is like 3 times as many as any of the other ones I put up on that one.
Oh wow. What's the difference
Nightmare.
between rubbernecking and? I mean, you could just concentrate on finding horror stories and publishing them. Is that satisfactory for you? Do you want to give analysis to it? Because I know that you have a big heart too, and you end up doing more than just that.
So people have different opinions about that.
Yeah. Well,
People
yeah,
think that I'm just completely callous and just mocking them and have no feelings. Some days I wonder if they're right.
Well, what is the purpose then of the mockery? What kind of social good can it facilitate?
I want to wake them up.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it's an absurd situation and no one's telling her the truth. Like, this is a horrifying situation she's in. And she's just completely just like focused on like, it's going to be perfect later. It's, you know, there was Ruby Fiera, for instance, was the porn actor, whatever, who got a vaginoplasty, and like, then because there's a lot of movement in that area, urethra's a lot shorter now, probably some other bacterial contamination, but also then he went and got a breast augmentation and then went septic and posted this like horrifying video from his hospital bed where he's just like, I was found cold, gray, and lifeless in my room, almost dead from a kidney. It sounded, I'm interpreting, that he got a kidney infection. It was probably started as a UTI, probably made worse by the surgery, the medications causing dehydration, pain medications causing him to not feel that he had a UTI because he was in pain meds. And that went to the kidneys, and it went septic, and it caused a giant infection in the breast implants, and the breast implants had to be removed and like washed out for like at least a week. Like literally almost died, and maybe like I knew someone that had post sepsis syndrome and ended up deteriorating over a period of 2 years, and then dying in his sleep from late effects of the sepsis. Like, I don't know how he's doing now. This happened in October, around Halloween.
Oh no!
But it's like you get an injury from that, and you're cold, gray, and lifeless. Your blood's not circulating the way it should. Your pressure drops. That can cause injuries to areas where the damage accumulates over time, and there's no stopping it. And it just gets worse and worse. Just because you survive the initial sepsis doesn't mean that you're fine. 50% of people get post-sepsis syndrome.
50% of what people? Breasts?
People who get sepsis.
Oh, okay.
If you get sepsis, half the time you end up with post-sepsis syndrome, and I imagine that's probably an underestimate. Because that's just when it's bad enough to get diagnosed. But it's like, who knows what damage was done, so. But it's like, they're all signing up for that. Like, sorry. It is upsetting. I don't know how else to help them, but it's really horrifying that they're signing kids up for this. And I don't know how to get people to watch without making jokes. So I get that I make a lot of jokes and it might seem callous, but otherwise people are just going to turn it off.
Yeah.
Because it involves the stranger's genitals, but it's like, it's still wrong what's happening, and people need to understand how wrong it is. So it seems like my method is effective for getting people to like watch and take in the horror of it. So I perhaps I've crossed the line at times. I try to not cross the line, but I also am doing I have multiple, sometimes conflicting aims here. I'm not just trying to reach the person I'm responding to. Sometimes I do reach the person I'm responding to, and they react in various ways. But I'm also trying to reach the audience.
Have there been successes of reaching people?
Shapeshifter. It seemed to reach him.
Yeah.
He's having a hard time lately. I don't know if you watch his channel.
So let's revisit that story. So you found him first. I interviewed him last year. Can't remember exactly when. I do so many interviews. But
I think it was in end of May or beginning of June, because you were uploading it in June.
So, but you found him on TikTok, was it, or?
No, he was on YouTube, and he had like a handful of videos, and a couple of them were about the vaginoplasty, and he had a few hundred followers. Yeah, so I made a reaction video to 2 of his videos, and then I guess about 7 or 8 months later, he found it. And then he made a Reddit thread where he was like, some turf's making money off my content.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
And then Lily Alexander showed up, the one that called me a liar for saying estrogen's carcinogenic.
Is it? Or isn't it not carcinogenic?
It definitely is. If
Okay.
you Google is estrogen a carcinogen, it's the first thing that comes up. Yes.
Okay.
Things that make tissue grow make cancer more likely. It's just generally true. So even estrogen as birth control for females will raise your lifetime cancer risk, but far lower than it raises the lifetime risk for males. Although females still end up with a higher risk because we're on estrogen far longer, including like early in development. So, but it's still, yeah. Anyway, yeah. So then I guess shortly after that, though, he kind of changed his mind a few months later, and then went on your show and went around and was apologizing to me, and I heard about it from other people, and then I
Oh yeah.
reached out, and so we've I interviewed him not long ago in December, and then he interviewed me. So we've done mutual interviews for each other's channels, and really rooting for him. And he's done a lot of good work since detransitioning, and he's gone and testified in the Florida Medical Board, and made a lot of content and interviewed a lot of other detransitioners that he's sought out and found and gotten their stories out there. And so he's just really leaned into that, I think. Yeah.
Huh. Making a difference with Exulansic.
A lot of them don't like me though. I like to think I was planting a seed though. I hope so. Even the ones that react badly. You know, it's a perspective they're probably not hearing anywhere else. I imagine. And especially with the jokes, I think it really sticks in there. It's a mind virus if you actually watch the video.
Yeah.
I hope. Anyway.
Have you done any adventures? We met up in Tacoma last year. Have you been traveling a lot? And what's your read of the lay of the land with regard to in-person meetups and stuff like that? What are the benefits and what's kind of going on?
I did a lot of traveling last year on the theory that people were about to forget about me after my ban. So I better enjoy while it lasts was my working model. It doesn't seem to have happened so much, but it's something I feared. So I decided to just go around while my memory was still fresh. So I went to several conferences, and I definitely recommend getting out to conferences. It really helps to meet people in person and to get a sense of like how people actually, because it's one thing to have people reacting to you online who are like seeking you out, trying to make you feel bad. But then you go to a place and you can get a better perspective on what people actually think of you. And so that was just really helpful, and putting faces to these screen names. So it's starting to be more real, and to really drive home the point that like all these commenters are people. Like there's a person on the other end. I'm not just responding to language, which is kind of how I feel like I was before. So it's been helpful to reach out to people, meet up with people, like talk about stuff that happened online, and come to some sort of understanding or not. Sometimes it hasn't worked out.
Has there been any bar fights, turf bar fights, or like Randy adventures of the turfs?
I won't say who, but someone pulled my chair out from behind me at a conference, like to make me fall. I didn't fall. I almost fell, but I caught myself because I was sober at the time. Because I normally am. Yeah, but it was like really not okay.
Okay.
It was not okay.
Did you guys get into a fist fight?
It was a very juvenile prank.
Okay. I just want to...
I was not...
Just one
because someone else at the conference had talked about her horrific tailbone injury.
Oh, no.
How it had like ruined her life in front of me and this other person. And also this other person had like asked me out. And I had been like, no. And then the next day she does it. I was like...
So many signals. So many signals.
Not okay. I've mostly gotten over it now, but oh my gosh, I have not been that angry in a long time.
Oh no, yeah.
I tell myself she's on the younger side, I think. So
How do you?
Just got to understand people are all the different stages of their development trajectory, and
Yes.
I don't think it was that malicious, but I'm human. I have emotions sometimes, rarely,
I have
and I never
emotions.
overreact to them ever.
I am emotional in a moderate way. Right. What is it? What do you think about, because the movement that you're involved with on a friendly side, most of your friends or allies are women, so you're dealing with a lot of like female energy, if that's a thing. Does that make sense? Is that a fair term?
Some of the
Female energy.
conferences have really been like leaning into that, where it's like they kind of like actually will like pray to the female goddess or something. It's like,
Okay.
okay, I mean, this is cool.
Is there vulva
Like
worshipping?
I like absorbing different cultures. So
Yeah.
I like being just go with the flow.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how different groups conceptualize like what are we doing and why are we doing it? What is the women's movement? Some of them feel like more and less churchy. So, which isn't automatically a bad thing. I think I published it. Yeah, I did. Where I talked about how when I was in college, I ran an atheist club on a theory of like this is an anti-church that's meant to provide the same social benefits as being part of a church without the requirements to believe stuff. So, I mean, it's interesting, but at the same time, I don't know. Sometimes groups just kind of like I feel like I'm doing the right thing, and then they all just turn off, spit me out. So far, that hasn't happened with feminist movements at all. But it's just like I've had enough experiences in life that I'm always a bit like I never quite feel like I'm part of the group.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was going to ask, like, do you feel like you're a leader or like a scout or?
I feel like I'm the ideas person.
Okay.
And the clown. I don't necessarily like. I look to the leaders in the movement.
Yeah.
I think people look to me as a leader, and so I try to live up to that idea. But like, I don't. I fundamentally think I'm not mature enough yet. I'm here for the jokes and the ideas and the research. If you have a question, I can probably answer. If you need me to organize something, no. I will oversleep and I will forget.
Yeah.
I try though. I'm aspiring to be that way. It's been nice to meet some real role models this past year. Like I've gotten to get to know Leah Keith and
Who's that?
she's a Wolf Women's Liberation Front.
Yeah.
And Kara Dansky I met and stuff out of the names. Liking
Names and faces.
April Morrill, the one whose hand got broken by the in the Tacoma like high school riot.
Oh yeah.
Response to Kelly. I've met Kelly Jenkins several times now, which has been like awesome every time.
What is she like in person?
So just like she is online, just like great.
Yeah.
Like no complaints. Like especially the first time, which was like right after all the stuff went down, and I was like, she was like immediately like, "Do you want to take a picture?" And I was like, "Are you sure you want to be seen with me?" And she's like, "Oh, I don't." Yeah. What'd she say? I don't give a tosh about all that. I was like, "Oh my god, I'm in love."
Yeah. She's on her own. She's on her own.
They've all been wonderful. Like I've been very very happy to meet everybody, even the ones that kind of prank me. I didn't like that. But overall, it's like I wouldn't say I dislike anybody.
Huh.
I've met. It's been very like it does feel like a community, a broader community. So I like that we're all working towards a common goal.
Is there going to be a big bash this year, or do you know of anything on the horizon? Everybody's always planning all these events. It's very active.
There's something coming up in March in Tacoma, so I might be up there for that. And what else? I think that there's also the thing I went to last year in June that's happening again. I think in July this year. Like I don't know if I'm going to go to that because that's a bit ways off. Huh?
Yeah, like a symposium or a conference kind of.
It was like a 4-day conference. So I generally will be like I can give one or more talks if you want, and then I can also just be there and you can put me on the ad. People will come to see me. So yeah. That's how I get away with the free food. But I have kind of like a long-term goal at some point. Like I kind of want to, I just Kelly Jenkins is such a role model. Like she's a true leader. So it's like I just kind of want to. How can I copy her? So she's going to Australia. I want to go to Australia at some point. That'd be cool.
Wait, that's a long-term
But I also
goal?
really like how kangaroo tastes. Have you ever had kangaroo?
I've never eaten a kangaroo. No.
Gilroy Garlic Festival has a booth that like has kangaroo meat. So I got to try kangaroo one time. It's the perfect meat.
Why?
It's like the texture of chicken, the flavor of beef, and the greasiness of pork.
Oh, wow.
It's just perfect. Like if I can catch one or a breeding pair, even bring them back.
Are they legal in the state
Probably
of California?
not. I'd have
Are
to
they
hide them.
cancerous? Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. In a cage.
Kangaroo.
Cancer kangaroo.
Well, they're just so weird. Have you ever like they're just so buff.
They're buff. They're boxy.
Have you seen like close-up videos where they just like just punch you? They're so like they're asking to be eaten.
That's not the first thing that crosses
And
my
they're so
mind.
meaty.
Yeah, I guess so. Okay. They're just so humanoid that I don't think of them as in the food category, maybe.
I mean, that's part of the appeal, right?
Okay, yeah. No, consume.
It's like
the hume.
safe cannibalism that's legal.
Yeah. Yes. Well, is it legal?
Like you
It
get
is
to you
legal.
get to feel
Okay. They're not
absorb
protected.
the energy of your opponent.
Yes. Well, I like to do that, but kind of like a transubstantiation. I make little wafers of my enemies, and then I have a little ritual.
I prefer to substantiation.
Cisubstantiation. It's so boring. Transubstantiation is where it's at. Cisubstantiation, isn't that just like calling a piece of bread yourself and then eating it?
Absorb appropriate behavior only. Absorb cultural stereotypes.
Yeah. Normative. Yeah. Total normative, absorbent and reflective. But are you planning anything? I guess you said that you're not a planner, so I'm just wondering if there's anything on the horizon that you're looking for, building toward, other than going to Australia and eating kangaroo.
I think that's a good life goal.
It's fine. I don't think it's a life goal, though. It's just something that you do.
It's a bucket list item. I want a bucket of kangaroos.
They could probably get it freeze dried and shipped to you.
Well, I've been working on a book.
Yeah.
So it's some hate watchers have been like, oh wow, I can't wait for this work. It's genius or so whatever. It's basically just going to be a book version of the videos. It's not because it's not going to be a Das Kapital or something like that. It's going to be the Pokemon trainer's guide to horrific gender surgeries.
Maniturfo. Turfofesto. Maniturfo or Turfofesto.
Basically. No, I mean, I kind of want it to be very general audience, so I'm probably not going to have a lot of heavy feminist theory in it. Like, it's not really going to be like a feminist theory book. It's going to be more like what you really need to know about why these interventions are not good. And also, here's a bunch of case studies.
When do you expect to have that?
And all my literature reviews. I'm not exactly sure. I definitely this year, I want it to be out this year, and I've made substantial progress on it. It's just a matter of like getting it on paper and finding a publisher. And so I would say I'm about a quarter of the way through.
Okay.
But it's actually like outlined and everything. I've been very impressed with myself. Normally I don't like plan ahead. I've also got a couple articles coming out in American Mind again. They keep publishing me. They're great.
Oh, great. What are these articles on? What have you been covering for them?
The last one I wrote that's not out yet is going to be part of some feature. They said, and it's just like Church of Trans from a detrans perspective. And so I kind of just like loosely talk about why it's a religion and the two sects that I think that exist and what the main differences between them are. It's a pretty short article. I don't know if they've accepted it. Hopefully they did. I should check in, but I submitted an article on like why these drugs are cancerous to Redux. And another one. I've submitted like 3 to American Minded. I don't know if any of them have come out, but I'm trying to remember what the other 2 were about.
They're kind of reports, research
Mind,
reports, or opinion pieces. Kind of like what's your genre?
The most recent one that I know was published was about how if you tell your doctor you're on you have a history of anabolic steroid use, then they're concerned. But if you tell them you have a history of anabolic steroid use to change your cosmetic appearance, they're not concerned. I think they're just kind of seen differently. And just generally about like what the side effects of testosterone are. I kind of at some point want to write a similar one on estrogen. And I've written a lot of articles on my Substack that will eventually be incorporated in the book that like why puberty blockers they're not switching the puberty because it's blocking it really upstream. And so you block I want to say hypothalamus with the gonadotropin releasing hormones and the pituitary. And therefore the pituitary is not releasing follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. And the article is mostly about luteinizing hormone. So like we know that does important things in terms of neural development in addition to developing the gonads.
What's gluteinizing?
Luteinizing hormone. It's just it's a hormone that the pituitary releases to cause the gonads to develop and then to start producing the sex hormones. Okay. So they're damming this river upstream that's blocking multiple hormones that are doing other things in the body. Yeah. And developing other areas in the body. And then they're only replacing the sex hormones cosmetically and expecting that to be the same. It's not the same. We don't know the effects of it. It's much more intense level of blockade than the castrati got. Because the castrati were just, the gonads were blocked from developing, but they still got the release of these other hormones in the brain that had really important impacts on the developing brain. So they use gonadotropin releasing hormone in analogs in Down syndrome, apparently sometimes too, and that improves cognitive function.
Oh, really? Okay.
But when they give it to Down syndrome patients, they give it as a pump so that it releases as a pulse. But when they use it to block puberty, it's a dial tone. So it has effects.
Wow.
So it's we don't know what those effects are.
What do you have you run across a ballpark figure of how many kids are on puberty blockers at this point?
The only figure I've heard was in response to Matt Walsh claiming millions and millions, and some figure came out of like under 5,000 for last year. But I also think that we don't really have the figures on that. I don't think there's like a centralized database where doctors are reporting it. It's, to my knowledge, it's not maybe I should Google this because I don't know if I've ever specifically Googled this, but I don't believe it's a controlled substance. So I don't believe that there's a central agency tracking the number of prescriptions for it.
Huh. Amazing. What do you think about Trump coming out this week with his like ban on gender surgery or whatever? I didn't like it.
That was wild. I was like, is he a fan? Is Trump watching my videos?
Well, I wouldn't mind that.
Am I going to give a speech at a Trump rally next year? What timeline are we on? It gave me an identity crisis.
Really?
A little bit, yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, I don't, it's a complicated, I think that the end of it's going to have to come from educating doctors and medical boards. I don't know that legislative bans are the answer, really. Because it just, with medical stuff, there's always the unintended consequences that are going to come out. Especially these attempts to ban drag, I think are stupid. Or like limit it based on defining, because the ones that define drag as like wearing an outfit different from your sex assigned at birth, or something like that. It's just like it's immediately going to run into disability issues and other such things. So it's like I don't think you need to define drag to ban these inappropriate drag things. And I've also seen like libs of TikTok posted a drag performance that she was like, this is so inappropriate. And I was like, I don't see a problem with this one. What's the problem with this one? This is the fact that the man is in a dress is not the problem. Like he's not acting inappropriately. He's just running around being silly in front of a bunch of teenagers who are all over 13. And it's at like it's there's a line and this just did not cross it for me.
Yeah.
And so if the bans would have banned that, I think that's tough. But most drag performances that I see get posted, they cross the line where this is inappropriate. But my dad dressed up as a witch for Halloween when my brother was like 6 and I was like 8, and it wasn't an inappropriate sexual display. He was just a man in dress because he was dressed as a witch for Halloween. Blew my brother's mind. He's like, you have to be a warlock. I'm a witch. My costume. It's great.
Yeah, there's no easy answer. It's about education and winning hearts and minds, as they put it. I don't think that it'll do any good for it to become an election issue, even though, I'm fine with the Democrats owning it and going down with the ship, but I don't think that it's at all positive for it to become a partisan issue on the federal election terms. And then executive orders. But I'm just in a state where I just don't trust the federal government at all with anything. I don't want it to have any. I want to have a lot less power, not more. So,
Did you support them shooting down the balloon?
oh God,
Or were you on Balloon Gate?
I don't. Was that a thing for you? I just people are talking about the balloon. I'm like, I don't know why this is the thing we're talking about. I saw the Red Balloon movie, and I just wanted to strangle the kid in it when I was a kid. So ever since then, I just avoid balloons.
I didn't understand like it just seemed like anything that they could have possibly seen with that balloon that they probably could have seen with balloons higher up these days or satellites. Like it didn't seem like something you needed to be that close to the ground to like. So I kind of like think that it is possible that it was some kind of weather balloon that got blown off course, and because it's like if you're gonna be a spy balloon, it's kind of obvious when you're just this giant white like spy balloon.
I'm a spy balloon. Look at me. Look
we're
at
gonna
you.
go to war with China. I'm gonna shoot it down. The people are like, it's 11 miles up. You're not going to shoot it down.
They shot it down, though. I mean, not a yokel.
With a plane. No, with a gun. People were talking about shooting it with a gun.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The good people of Montana can shoot it down.
If you have a cannon, I'm sure there's a guy with a cannon. Surface-to-air missile. There's got to be at least one guy out there with a bazooka.
Does the Second Amendment protect surface-to-air missiles?
I think.
If not, why not?
Well, I'm probably sure you can have a bazooka. Why not? Maybe, yeah. No, I don't see why not.
How far do bazookas go? 11 miles up?
Probably not. But if you got a hot air balloon and a bazooka and you married the two, or a remote controlled drone, you can totally build a.
Yeah, it seems like a drone would be like a drone with a knife on it.
Yeah,
like
a little pokey drone. Yeah.
But yeah, I just everything like I have no idea what's actually going on like with the federal government. Like it's just this terrifying entity.
Yeah. I was speaking with a woman who works in the State Department. Well, who had worked in the State Department yesterday about this case, and there's this girl in Virginia who got the school changed her gender and didn't tell her adopted parents, and then she ran away and got it and smuggled in a sex ring and then put in juvie, and just this huge, terrible story. And so they're building a law around Sage's law. Yeah, Sage.
Yeah, Sage is live. I've heard about that. I met up with Billboard Chris a couple weeks ago because he was at Berkeley.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Was he everything you imagined? Did you have to look like this? Because you guys are different.
Yeah. No, it was great. That's how I saw him. Like I was on campus for like 3 hours looking for him. Like seriously, I could not find him for anywhere. And I was about to go home, and I had gone into a Walgreens and bought a sandwich. And I was about to call the Uber, and I look over, and he just emerges, and he's like 6 inches above the next tallest freshman, and it's like, oh, there he is. Just like ran up and got. It was great, but then I ended up spending the whole day carrying a sandwich around.
But you carried a sandwich board around? You helped him out?
No, I was holding a literal sandwich.
Oh, not the board, but the
sandwich. I had purchased to eat. He also let me wear half the sandwich board, so it stopped being a sandwich board at that point. I was wearing one of them.
Became a plank.
It was an open face sandwich board.
Yeah, like a panini of some sort.
Yeah, and so we got
wear it on your
the
back or your
furries.
front?
We got flipped off by a few people.
Did you wear it on the front and the back, and then you flipped off a furry?
I just wore it on the front.
Okay.
So I think I had a children can't consent to puberty blockers, and then he had the definition of dad or something. And so we trans identified male / trans woman. Like, I feel like I need to like double mark them because there's different groups that like, if I don't, then they're like, oh, you shouldn't call them that. You shouldn't call them that. Like, I just want to communicate. Just let me communicate.
Stop policing my language. You're making it inefficient.
But yeah, he's like, can we talk about broke my pen. That noise. If you heard it, he agreed to talk to us and have a conversation. He wanted to take a picture, so we took a picture. It's on my Substack, and then he was like, we can talk on the condition that it has to be about trains. And I was like, well, boy, are you in luck. You know how I feel about trains.
Wait, what? You're a train hater, aren't you?
No, I like trains.
Oh,
I told
okay.
you.
Okay, but you
I was on a whole train trip. I got on a train. I went from Los Angeles to Chicago to Philadelphia to New York. And
but you study trains? Are you down with train lore?
I mean, when I'm inside them, I study.
Okay.
I don't like facts about the experience of being on a train. He knew stuff about like the names of trains and train lines, and he knew like more stuff than I did, and I knew more stuff than he did about different aspects of being on a train. I'd had more train trips than him, just being alive longer.
What was
but it was interesting to like share facts about trains.
Yeah,
about Amtrak.
What was communicated through that interaction, other than the train knowledge?
Just common ground.
Okay, yeah.
Common train track covered ground.
Yeah. Riding the rails.
Yeah, no, it was great. It was a hobo riding the rails. It was fun. Writing my book deliberately, like, 'cause I was like, well, I'm not going to have internet for like several states worth of train trip, so that'll force me to focus, and it worked. But like, also sleeper cars are the best. That was my first time on a sleeper car. They like cook meals for you. That's like actual meals.
What?
Like
really?
restaurant quality meals.
Oh.
That you order from a menu, and it's like made fresh, and it's actually really good, and there's alcohol and like included, and like what else? Oh, and then they seat you with other sleeper car passengers only. Oh. And then they force you to sit with other people. So it's like you get to talk to the other sleeper car people and actually get to know them over your meal. So it's like, it's cool.
Was there a murder?
I was worried there was going to be, because we got like the train just like broke in Colorado for several hours, and to the point where the engine wasn't on and it was getting cold because it was in the middle of the night in like December. And I was like, oh my God, is this, do they know I'm on this train? The TRAs.
They don't have a balloon on your ass here.
You don't know that.
Yeah, okay, I guess we don't know.
I was really worried, like, what? It would be the perfect crime. What was I going to do?
That would be one way to go out, get murdered on a train by your mortal enemies. That'd be kind of... I mean,
we were close to Colorado Springs. I was worried that Mixed Aldrich was going to come get me either. You never know. I used to live in Colorado Springs. Me and Colorado Springs go way back.
Okay,
I made some enemies in first grade.
Some bad blood in first grade. You were tearing it up. Were you kissing the wrong boys?
The whole thing where I was going to buy this ring from this girl for $1, and I gave her the $1, and she said she was going to give me the ring, and then she didn't. She wouldn't give me my $1 back. She already spent it. Then she wouldn't give me another $1 because that was her dad's dollars, and I was like desperately trying to explain to her. There was another time also that I was jump roping, and the jump rope slipped out and hit this girl in the head, and she was like, "I got a cracked skull." For some reason, my teacher thought that the correct solution was for her to extort a toy from me. And then, like, I went home and told my mom that this was the arrangement. It was like, I was going to get punished unless I brought, like, my prized giant bear to school and handed it over. So my mom had to come to school and be like, what the shit's going on?
This sounds no different from turf drama. This sounds like the internet.
It was a nightmare. There was a green bench. I was always sent to it.
Wait, what?
They had like a green bench in front of the principal's office. So when you got in trouble, you had to go on the bench. And oh my God, there was this other time. Colorado Springs is nuts.
I'm just got a lot of trauma around here. Okay. Jeez.
The other time I was trying to open my marker, and it like opened really fast. Like I didn't have good like motor stuff, I guess, but like I hit the girl next to me in the eye, and for some reason I thought lying about it was the right answer. So I was like, it's like, I don't know what happened. She's just crying.
Did you get caught?
But then because of that, like everyone decided that I had poked her intentionally, which is not true. It was not true at all. And then I got sent to the bench, and like there was like a whole interrogation process where they were trying to get me to tell them why I had poked her in the eye. Because like he wouldn't just go up and do that for no reason. I'm like, that's not what happened. This is what happened. they just didn't believe me, and so like I had to write it like a forced confession, an apology letter. I was like 6. Taught me a lot about power structures.
Yeah.
I'm just
You've always been kind of a delinquent, huh? Even when you're not trying to be.
once the system's against you, it's just it. You can resist, but you have no right to an attorney when you're 6.
No, not even your mom can be on your side in some certain cases.
No, I was only there for like a little over a year though, so that was a oh, good times.
Let's wrap up the recording. Chat afterwards.
Sure.
Exulansic. Where can people get a load of you? You're in.
I have so many platforms now. I'm on Rumble.
You're diversified.
On Odyssey.
Yeah.
I have an Exulansic.com points to Odyssey. If you go to my link tree, that's got everything.
Okay.
So that's linktree.ee/Exulansic.
And what's your Substack? What's the frequency of posting? Do you have like kind of a schedule, or is just
just kind of whenever I get the impulse, but I post several times a week.
Oh wow! Okay.
It's a mixture of essays and videos. Like I try to just post like something every couple of days, even if it's just a literature review. But I'll just kind of get random ideas like, well, I wonder if SRY affects this protein, or I wonder if there's any literature on, pancreatic function and excess testosterone, or just stuff like that. And of course there is. There's infinite. Like it's great. And I'll just like read it. And then I have another series called Literature Review where I try to find like the research that supports trans and read it and explain like why this is crap.
Oh.
Basically is my point. So
how's Twitter treating you? You're on there too, I see.
Twitter's great. Twitter's been great since Elon took over.
It's been good for you?
Like it's amazing. So I fully welcome the God Emperor. Hope he takes over YouTube too.
That would be nice. That would be nice. Either that or kind of. I don't see Twitter becoming a YouTube. It's just totally two different forms of communication, like the video format and the commentary. I don't know how he's going to wet him, but I know he has plans for the Everything app. So somehow he's going to marry it all.
Someday. Yeah. So this Twitter has stayed up longer than the original Twitter and is bigger now.
Wow.
So it's a success story. Hopefully it's still there when this interview ends. We'll see.
We'll see. Changing the world with Exulansic. Thank you. Thank you for bringing your hair and your dander. No.
Thank you for respecting my dander identity and my hair nouns.
Totally. I know there's a boundary, and I embrace your boundaries in a very non-boundary violating way. I just kind of get right up in there. But I don't cross them just right.
You approach the limit from the left.
From the left, what?
Like a limit. So you have like an asymptote and you approach it. That's the limit, and then you just approach it, and you just approach it for infinity.
Okay. Somehow everything is scientific with you. You're always bringing in the math. I'm not going to complain. I'm on the recording.